Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on how to report on remote worker productivity and experiences across your Citrix or VMware Horizon environments. By ways of introduction, my name is Stacy Leibwinger, and I'm part of the marketing department here at Goliath. I also have with me Yemi Ladyju, who's our senior technical consultant, and going to be talking about some of the ways that we deliver data, how we share data, and how we really go ahead and enhance it through our reporting capabilities to help you achieve this goal. Now, before we get started, I just want to do some basic housekeeping. In terms of agenda today, I'm going to go through just a handful of slides to really give you a contextual overview of some of the challenges and also who Goliath is. From there, Yemi's going to dive into some of the data and reports that we offer to really solve this challenge of documenting remote worker experiences and productivity. And then we'll wrap up with a few use cases and questions. So please, throughout, submit your questions. We will answer them as we go, or we will save them through the end. I know one question we always get is, will this be recorded? Yes, this is recorded, and we will have it in your inbox within the next 24 hours. Also, at the completion of this webinar is a very short survey. It will take you less than 30 seconds to complete. Please do fill that out. It gives us feedback to know if we're hitting the mark with our content and delivering what you expected to learn for the day. So before we jump into the heart and the meat of today's conversation, I wanted to give you just a brief background on Goliath. We offer software to monitor and troubleshoot the end user experience regardless of where users or workloads are located. So why many of these organizations that you see on the screen have turned to us is because of our ability to automatically discover your virtualized infrastructure, whether it be Citrix or VMware, and then be able to identify what conditions, events, and failure points that you want to alert on, automatically set those thresholds based on best practices, and then alert anytime those thresholds are exceeded, giving you data and content to easily resolve for your end users. IT leaders from these organizations tell us that they leverage Goliath because of the embedded intelligence and automation. And the fact is, our technology has had an organizational impact on them equivalent to hiring 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts. That's available 24/7 by 365 days a week. Another key takeaway here is the logos on this screen represent the fact that our technology can scale to the largest of Citrix or VMware environments, but we also have the ability with our ease of use and price profile to be leveraged in small to medium-sized organizations. And finally, I do know we have a few health systems on the line today. We do have a focus in healthcare. We are the only vendor in our space that offers monitoring and troubleshooting, not only across that IT delivery infrastructure, but we can also pull in data around Logon and session performance experiences for all major EHR systems, Cerner, Epic, Meditech, Allscripts. In fact, we have business relationships as well as purpose-built modules for these EHR systems that allows health systems to successfully deliver on that end user experience. Now, with that background, I'm going to jump into the topic that we promised to deliver today. I'm sure many of you registered for this webinar because you're dealing with a variety of new questions that have emerged over the last several months, which are, how do I know if my remote workers are really working and being productive in their home office? Are they as productive as they were when they were in the office? What applications are they using? Do we know if they have good enough performance to be productive, or is that hindering their ability to work? Do we know if we're fixing issues when they come up? Do we know when issues do arise, what's causing it? Is it our overall infrastructure, or is it their home Wi-Fi connection? There's a lot of questions being thrown to you as IT pros, and these questions are not easy to answer. And it's often hard to explain maybe to your business counterpart or even your manager why these are not trivial. The reason it's so complex to answer many of these questions is when you're talking about Citrix and VMware, you're not talking about a singular technology. You're referencing an entire experience that is delivered by over 15 different technologies coming together. If you take your users, every single one of your users is unique. How they work, where they work, their behavior, what they have running, their endpoint, all of that is unique. Then you add the fact that they're not only scattered across maybe a few office locations, but now probably 90% of them are in their home office. That's a whole nother level of variability around Wi-Fi connection, bandwidth allocation. Again, the endpoint. Many are still using home computers now that they're working from home. All of this adds an extreme amount of variability into their experience before you even hit what's going on in your data center. Looking at your overall Citrix or VMware infrastructure, the applications you're delivering. If you're in healthcare, those EHR systems, the back-end systems from your licensing server to your SQL server. There might even be more complexity because some of your back-end systems might be on premises, others might be in AWS, Azure, or another cloud service. And then you have your hypervisor host layer, which could be any number of vendors, and again, sometimes a mix. So when you look holistically at this picture, when you're asked, is the experience strong? Why is someone having slow logons? Are they being productive? You need to be able to pull all of that together to respond. And so you don't know if someone's having slow logon performance. Is it because of an issue in the data center? Maybe there's something wrong in Active Directory, or is it their home Wi-Fi network, or is it their overall behavior? And maybe they're not being productive because they don't have the performance or access that they need to the application in order to be productive at home. And so driving visibility to answer those questions really requires a technology that can give you an end-to-end view. And that's what Goliath has been built for. Goliath has been purpose-built to look beyond just your Citrix or VMware Horizon environment and look at the entire experience. Looking at end-user behavior, for example, do they have Netflix streaming in the background? Do they have a large graphical file? Are they using graphically intense programs, for example, that's consuming a lot of bandwidth? Then looking at the delivery infrastructure, even beyond just Citrix and VMware, looking at storage, the VMs. And then again, if you're in health systems, looking at those EHR applications. And so with Goliath, we give you that end-to-end visibility across everything so that you can anticipate issues before they occur. When they do occur, isolate root cause and resolve quickly. And finally, the piece we're going to dive in today around is document that experience, proving that permanent fixtures have been in place and things have been fixed. Also giving data so you can help prove across management, your IT counterparts, other vendors, end users themselves, what's causing any issues, as well as identifying key areas that can understand productivity of that end user leveraging through all these systems. And so one more slide before I turn it over to Yemi to really dive into the report is when we talk with our clients, we spend a lot of time talking about data, right? We have specific reports and we're going to show them to you, but how do you actually use this information so that you can drive actionable insights around remote worker productivity and their experiences? We do this by providing data that can easily be shared, meaning that it can be exported in PDF, Excel, CSV, you can email it, you can print it, you can divide it and send to specific management groups. We also allow you to integrate it into third-party systems, whether it be to help with ticketing, like a ServiceNow or Ready. Maybe you want some of the alerts and events to be logged in your event management system, like a Splunk. And finally, we allow you to enhance it by leveraging out-of-the-box reports that really give you specific details around productivity levels and experience, and then even visualize that data should you want through tools like Power BI or Tableau, which really then often will create even a more executive view into this information so you can see trends over time. And that's the other critical piece. We provide this data both in real time as well as historical views so you can see those trends. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yemi, and he's going to talk about some of the metrics that you can leverage in order to answer those questions, and then drill down into some of the sample reports that we offer around this very topic. Yemi?
Thanks, Stacy. So when we're talking about the metrics, you can really sort of categorize them into the sort of these three sections that we have here on the screen. We have the end user activity, which is going to break down their productivity, the peak usage, understanding the types of users that are accessing the environment, what their working environment or their standard workflow is, and how they're leveraging their tools on a daily basis. The next thing is end user performance. Of course, this is very focused on their experience while they're accessing their environment, so their logon time, their latency, whether it's a connection issue or something taking place on the resources that are supporting those sessions. And then, of course, we have the system performance, those back-end components that you have deployed in your data center or elsewhere, whether it's a cloud environment or even a sort of hybrid environment, we are starting to see a lot more of in our customer environment. So with that, let's go through some sample reports and talk about how customers are able to leverage this data in these reports, and talk through how this is actually used and deployed, especially now in a majority work from home environment. So the first report that I'm going to show is the very popular end user productivity report. And this is the basis of this report is intelligence into the individual Citrix environment, in this case, breaking down everything that goes into the user's session from a Citrix or ICA performance perspective, and then leveraging that data to determine some specific things about their productivity. So drilling into this report a little bit, we can isolate this first user, and you can see the user, their endpoint IP address, and this is done without deploying any technology to their machine, of course. You can see what infrastructure component they leverage to access the environment, and so on and so forth. You can see the start date of their session, the current session state at the time of this report being launched, and then the time at which that session state changed. So whether that is a disconnected session, whether that is an active session, or in this case, a logged off session, as you see here. And of course, we can break down the duration of that session as well. And then moving forward, we can talk about some of the metrics that we are sort of enabling due to our deep Citrix integration. And you can see here interaction time, which is the amount of time that they're actually spending creating ICA traffic within their session. And this is going to take into account user maybe moving their mouse every 15 seconds or 15 minutes so that the screensaver doesn't come up, or their session policy doesn't kick in. This is going to account for maybe a user just logging in, playing a 4-hour video, and then going a walk or something like that. This is going to take into consideration all the types of traffic and everything that they're doing in their session, and sort of put it together in sort of an interaction metric here. Conversely, you can then see the amount of time that they're not interacting with their environment. So, and this is pretty self-explanatory, the time that they're just not doing work, or they're not actually being productive. And then you have your interaction percentage. This has been very, very helpful, not just from a sort of big brother perspective, right, to understand are people working, but to understand the working environment, understand how users are actually working, in sort of a work from home environment, when they have kids that they have to take care of, and other sort of duties at home while also being productive for work. Another metric that is very, very important is this metric here, which is the max inactivity time. What this does is it presents the maximum amount of time that a user was inactive inside of the session. This adds a lot more visibility into this user's session as well. So for instance, if someone had 2 hours of inactivity, sort of like in that first example, however, the max inactivity time was 42 minutes, then you know that this user was probably taking short little breaks within the day, and it doesn't seem like they just stopped working for 3 hours or 4 hours or something like that. That additional insight helps to understand, is this user actually working, or of course, are they sort of just trying to cheat the system, or again, trying to understand how users work from now in sort of a remote or work from home environment. We had an example where the customer found out that users actually would log in later on in the night and work while the kids are sleeping, or they don't have some sort of additional responsibilities, and then take longer breaks during the day while they're supporting, whether that's homeschooling or anything else like that, and then coming back to work. So understanding the working environment has been very, very helpful for a lot of our customers. And then finally, you can see all the applications that were published for those users for their Citrix sessions there. The next one that I wanted to show is the end user experience report. Now, this is a very holistic report. It breaks down the user for a specific time period, of course, and it breaks down basically those core components, those key components that go into the overall end user experience. So for instance, here you can see their IP address again, whether their connection was fast or slow, whether their logon duration, is it meeting your SLAs, of course, their ICA latency, so on and so forth. So this is a very holistic view, but then keep in mind we have additional reports that break it down further. So if we look on this next report, this is the logon duration report specifically. And to Stacy's point earlier, this is powered by the amount of data that we collect that is available in the technology. So here you can see an actual user session, the logon duration. You can see here, very important, whether this session was a reconnect or not. And then you can see the different stages of the logon process. So not only can IT use this to understand the environment, but you can also use this to see what portions of the logons we need to tackle next. A lot of our customers will sort of use this to understand, okay, it looks like GPOs are starting to get pretty high. What can we do to support that? And they leverage our technology in troubleshooting those sort of things. Another thing is, I pointed out the reconnects. A lot of our customers use this to make sure that they're hitting those KPIs for logged on sessions as well as reconnected sessions as well. So you can take this data, extract it, and make sure that you're sort of putting this in a way or setting it up to management to show either improvements in the environment or that you're making those KPIs. So these are sort of the out-of-the-box reports that are available in the technology. Next couple reports are going to break down specifically ways that our customers have enhanced the data that we have by leveraging some additional tools. So for instance, here, you can see these are more sort of management-focused reports leveraging Power BI, and this is a license usage report that breaks down the license usage for particular delivery groups in Citrix, breaks it down per day, per application as well, which is very, very helpful to understand, okay, are we close to licenses? Some customers like to be really close, others like to have a large gap. So understanding that and understanding the usage and to understand if we need more licenses and things like that. And this is another one that breaks down the logon duration per application and also per day, per hour. So breaking it down further to get that additional analysis of the performance of the environment. And then finally, we have these reports. We specifically focused on Citrix. We also have these reports coming for VMware Horizon as well, where you can break down the different portions of the logon, as you can see here, even the performance metrics, so on and so forth. So we have a couple of examples here for the VMware Horizon logon duration reports that we have, where we're breaking down the different logon times per day and also per the different stages of the logon process as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to Stacy, and she can talk about some of the client success stories.
Great. Thank you, Yemi. So just to highlight a bit about how do organizations leverage the kind of data that Yemi just talked through. So the first is an example, their Empire Office. They actually are a large furniture distributor, more for office environments. They're actually based in New York City. So whenever COVID hit, they had 2 office floors in Manhattan and everyone had to work from home. They're a family-owned business, and so the management there was not as concerned of are our people working, because they figured they were. They were concerned, though, in the different roles, whether it be the designers or it be back office, were they able to be as effective from home as they were in the office? And was there any way to measure that? They also wanted to understand the emotional toll everything was taking on their employees. They knew many of them had potentially been impacted by relatives that had COVID. Many of them now were homeschooling their children. And so they just wanted to have a better pulse on what is going on in our environment. And so they started to leverage the productivity report. Yemi, if you bring it up again, using exactly what you saw. And what they said is it drove a lot of great conversations across management and HR. And it wasn't, let's go scold those that aren't working. It was really, do they have access to the right applications? They learned that some of their design team didn't have key applications available through their Citrix environment. They also learned things like people were putting in more hours, and they were actually concerned of burnout. They were seeing that people were working different times and different parts of the day, which may require different support for them. And so they were able to do this and put actually operational and more HR practices in place to better support their needs. And this is leading even into more conversations around, as people start coming back to work, who needs to be in the office? They're seeing certain roles need to be in the office. They need that collaboration. They're using applications that consume a lot of bandwidth and network, and no matter what they put behind it, it's just not as effective in them working from home as in the office. And so from this report, they didn't even just look at productivity levels, they really looked at overall behavior, and they were able to drive these conversations with business counterparts and HR. Now, the next set of reports is a little bit different, but we hear this a lot. So this is a large healthcare organization. They're in the Midwest of the US here. They have several different health hospital locations, and they had gone under a large initiative, which we were actually part of, to bring their log-on times down. And so while not always remote, when you think about health systems, they're always logging in from different locations in the hospital. Different floors have better connectivity than others. There's a lot of environmental factors. And they promised management, after making a significant investment in upgrading their Citrix environment, back-end servers, also work with their EHR system, that they would get log-ons to 30 seconds for initial and reconnects under 10. And they committed that they'd be able to keep that standard of care. And so while they needed solutions to help ensure that they were having good performance, they also needed a way that they could measure this. So on a quarterly basis, they could report back to their CIO and say, yes, we not only invested in this project, we are successful in those metrics. And the way they did that was leveraging our out-of-the-box report. So as Yemi showed, we have the log-on report, which will allow them to quickly see, are they hitting that 30-second initial connect and reconnect? If they're not, they can see exactly where the issue was and resolve it. Because you might not hit it all the time, but they're looking for averages. So they have this report that they not only can deliver quarterly to management, but now the team that owns this project can look at it on a weekly basis and make sure that they're hitting their marks. They also leverage a much more visual aspect of this report, so they can see those trends over time. Yemi, next slide. And so they're leveraging the Power BI, right? And they're determining, are they hitting that average mark? Are they over and under? They can see if there's patterns over certain days or certain groups or certain parts of the delivery cycle. So again, by leveraging this data, they can report back to management, but they can also watch it on their own. Now, one thing we haven't spent a ton of time talking through today is about the troubleshooting aspect of our software. And we purposely saved time at the end for questions, and we're happy to show more of this during the Q&A session. But this hospital not only used us to show the reports and prove things have been fixed, they actually used us to fix a lot of their logon issues. And in order to fix the logon issue, you need to know root cause of what's causing them. So within our software, when you talk about that end-to-end experience, we have real-time data that allows you to drill into current sessions for every user or historical sessions. So here's an example of the screen, which is sorted by every user session, and you can sort by logon time. So they were able to go in and see who's experiencing logon time. Is there any similarities across those individuals? There's other capabilities we have where you can isolate root cause as being a core infrastructure. But in this use case, they were able to drill into each of these user sessions. Go into the next slide, Yemi. and see logon details broken out. And what they were able to see here is logon broken out by each stage. And we actually go into 33 stages of the logon process. And in this case, they were able to see that the profile load time was high. Then they were able to specifically go and see that it was the GPO time and the execution of group policy taking a significant amount of time, and then drill down into the specific group policy. And what they were able to find, there was a number of instances where their users were having their GPOs mapped to old data, old printers, old data drivers, and they were able to go ahead and reflect those different settings. So what has maybe taken them hours and kind of hunting for that needle in the haystack took them minutes to really isolate root cause and fix the issue. So that's a huge portion of the value proposition that we at Goliath provide, not just the data, but actually providing you the insight. So if an end user does call in and is having issues, we can isolate root cause, determine, is it because of their behavior? Is it because of the endpoint? Is it because of their home Wi-Fi? Is there something in their GPO setting? Is it something in storage? And so being able to isolate those issues can also give back significant time to your admin. So with that, please go ahead and submit some questions. We already have a few come in. One of the ones we typically get is, well, how long does this take to get up and running? It really does not take a lot of time. In fact, Empire Office, for example, whose #1 reason was to execute the end user productivity report, had this up and running and functioning all in the same day. So we have our white glove service that allows you to get up and running. We'll get the software installed. We'll get you set up with out-of-the-box reports and alerts, leveraging our technical experts. And then again, we have that embedded intelligence and automation. So we're automatically discovering your environment. We're automatically setting up alerts and thresholds based on best practices and years of learning and best practices from Citrix as well as VMware. And so we can do a lot of this, not requiring any expert to use it. In fact, some of our customers have college students as interns on their help desk, leveraging this for troubleshooting and looking at a lot of the reports and data. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to questions. And again, if you have any questions, please do submit them in the Q&A box. So let me look here. So question #1, Yemi, is there a way to see at a macro level if something is going wrong with our Citrix infrastructure so that they can respond to it quickly?
Absolutely, this is a very good question, and I think that relates very well to your point earlier, where our technology is automatically going to discover all of those components that contribute to Citrix in the environment. So all of those components from all those different vendors, map them out and present them here. And I jumped over to the technology in the topology view or automatic discovery and dependency map view. So you can see here from left to right, the NetScalers, the storefront servers, delivery controllers, and any supporting servers like your database or your licensing servers, PBS servers, domain controllers, all of those components that actually impact the delivery. Now the screen is sort of powered by embedded intelligence. So we have over 300 monitoring rules that we're monitoring for conditions, failure points, thresholds, events that can cause end user experience issues. And those rules then sort of drive a heat map structure, effectively making the thing not view, right? So as issues take place on components, they turn red. You can then click on the components and really quickly be able to identify things on the right-hand side of the screen, like resource utilization, context-specific health checks, any alerts that are firing off on those machines. You can even take further into a delivery layer, so more of a logical breakdown of the environment, again with the embedded intelligence, where you can see your delivery groups, machine catalogs, gold images, automatically discovered, of course. And then on drilling into a particular delivery group, you can actually tie back user experience to the components that are actually delivering the sessions to the users in this delivery group. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see average ICA latency, average network latency, average connection speed, and tie that all the way back down to the to the machine catalog, to the hypervisor cluster, even to the individual hypervisor host. So if there's a host that has maybe like storage latency issues or CPU ready issues that could be negatively impacting user experience, you can make those correlations not only with the NOT capabilities, but then leverage this to collaborate with your networking teams or your storage teams to be able to get these things resolved. Hopefully that answered the question.
Great. Next question, Yemi, is how is your productivity report tracking activity different from idle time in Citrix?
Oh, that's another question that I think that we get a lot. Yeah, so the Citrix idle times, or the idle times or active times, I think those are actually sort of Windows metrics, and those metrics are used to determine whether or not users or an admin should, let's say, put a machine in maintenance mode, or remove it from the rotation and things like that. It's really not meant to report on productivity. So because of this, there's a lot of gaps in that, meaning that there's some 20 minutes or 30-minute gaps where if there's any action within that time period, then that sort of records that time period holistically as being active. What our report does is, because we have that deep integration into all of the different channels being used in their Citrix environment, and all the different types of behaviors that can be done inside of a Citrix session, our technology is going to sort of take a look at all of those things and then use those to make those decisions on whether or not a user is being productive or not. So the material difference there is our report's going to be a lot more accurate and focused on the behaviors inside of the sessions that actually show productivity.
Another question related to the productivity report, maybe all reports, but with your productivity report, can you automatically email that out to relevant managers? Probably breaking it down by their employees, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly how the report is being used on a daily basis. We have different business line managers that maybe it's the marketing team or the engineering teams. They all have reports sent out to the different departments directly from the technology.